Today we're going to talk about changes to Medical Device Academy's quality system. But in order to tell the story and set the stage, I need to go all the way back to 2012. Back in 2012, when I first started consulting on quality systems and regulatory submissions for medical device companies, I had the idea, hey, a lot of our clients need quality systems. If I write a generic quality system, I can sell it to lots of companies and help them customize it for their needs. So that's how the idea began. But back then, I was in the garage of my old house. It was uninsulated. It was very cold in the winter in Vermont. This was back at the beginning of global warming, and it was still cold in Vermont. And back then, I had a comforter wrapped around me in the winter to keep me warm, and you could see my breath coming out of my mouth. And you could see me shivering a little bit if you had a Zoom call with me late at night or early in the morning. And I even had a folding metal chair that I sat on. And because it was a little lower than the workbench in the garage, I had to put the folding metal chair up on wooden blocks. Not ideal. So when people ask me, why did you do your quality system this way? A lot of things that we did back in 2012 and 13 and 14 were because that's what we had to do. We didn't have unlimited resources and unlimited time to do things. So when we named our quality procedures SYS, it was a decision I made back then when I was freezing to death. Why do we do it now? Because that's the way we've always done it. It's not a really good answer. In fact, I criticize the FDA of that answer all the time, and companies of that. Like, just because you've always done it that way doesn't mean it's a good idea. So the FDA, after 30 years, is finally going to modernize and update the quality system requirements. And what that means is they're going to incorporate by reference ISO 1345, 2016, effective February 2nd of next year. So after 30 years, they're going to do this. Medical Device Academy doesn't need an act of Congress to make this happen. We can just do it. But before we just do it, I want to get feedback from you on how we should improve and modernize our quality system. We've got over 50 procedures. We've got probably over 100 forms and logs and templates. When do you use a form? When do you use a template? That's a question I get asked. And I don't really have a good answer for why we did it. It's just that's what we did at the time when we were building it. But if I thought about it more strategically, I would have said, oh, we ought to do this. We ought to have these as forms, and only these things are templates. Well, now's a really good time to make those changes that are strategic because the FDA is modernizing their quality system requirements. I'm going to have to make little tweaks to all the procedures to accommodate that. Let's just use this as an opportunity now. The next 5 months, let's update, or actually it's more than 5 months, it's more like 7 months. Let's update the entire quality system strategically. Think about what we want to do to improve it and modernize it, make it better for you. So we came up with a list of ideas. You're going to have your own ideas. You're going to have your own questions. Please share them with us. Comment. Type in your comments into the chat, or put them in the put it in the comments in the live streaming. So whatever live streaming channel you're looking on, type it down below, and I'll comment on those, and we'll consider those as, hey, this is something somebody suggested that we actually do to improve our quality system. We're also going to send out a survey as soon as this is done, 1 o'clock Eastern. We're going to send out a survey to all our existing clients. There are over 100 clients that have bought this quality system from us. Get their feedback on these ideas too. So, nope, don't like that idea. Yes, we like that idea. Oh, here's some other ideas. That's what we're looking for you for. Yes, no, something else. Your ideas. So I'll just walk you through a couple of the things and explain them a little bit. I don't have time to go through all 20 ideas that we brainstormed. But some of these are ideas that you've suggested already in the past or asked questions about. And some of them were ideas that we had in the back of our minds because we thought it would really help. So number one on my list And I kind of think it probably ought to be the number one priority, but that's my opinion, not yours. So that's why I'm asking. What about making it easier to implement for MDSAP certification? MDSAP certification is the medical device single audit program, and it has a lot of country specific requirements. Now, we've gone to the trouble of identifying country specific requirements for US and Canada and Europe, but we could expand that to other markets. We could also specifically call out country specific requirements that are required in MDSAP to facilitate the initial certification audit. So when the auditor says, I'm looking for this requirement, there's a symbol that you can do a Control F, find, search for in the Word document or PDF document, and you can instantly find that requirement in that document, whether it's the quality manual or it's in the procedure itself. So if we take each of those requirements and make sure they're in the procedure and we identify them with some character, that might really help. And there are lots of characters to use. If you just look at your keyboard, you've got symbols like a caret symbol, that's a little V pointing up. You've got dollar signs, you've got hashtags, you've got percent signs, you've got asterisks. All those are symbols that we could use. But if you dedicate the symbol to the specific regulation, in this case, MDSAP, it might really help show where the requirements met. And conceivably, we're going to have some duplication of requirements if we go this route, because MDSAP covers US, Canada, Australia, Brazil, and Japan. So that's one of the ideas. Let me walk you through a couple of the other ideas. So change the SOP numbers. Right now, they were just numbers that were sequentially assigned as we created the quality system. So guess what? I started with document control. That was number one. Number two was record control. Number three was management review. And I used the management review as a free example to everybody. If we switched it to match the clause numbers, it would be SOP 4.2.4 would be the document control. SOP 4.2.5 would be record control. SOP 5.6 would be management review. So that gives you an idea, and a lot of companies do it that way. It's not my idea. It's just, I think it's a really good one that helps you predict what the procedure number is going to be and links it to the ISO standard. It also has a disadvantage. If you don't follow ISO 13485, it's not too helpful. But for a company that only makes medical device procedures, I don't see that as being a problem. The bigger problem is, what if ISO 13485 changes their complete numbering system and they decide to adopt what 9001 has done? They've been told they have to do that. But the committee can take the approach of, we're not going to, it's necessary to come up with a different clause structure that's specific to the medical device industry. And part of their reasoning behind that would be because of other standards that use the ISO 13485 standard. There's a lot of integration already between electrical safety and risk management. Maybe it makes sense to have a standalone procedure that's just for the medical device industry. And there are some deviations that they made. They changed the ISO 9001 standard to eliminate preventive action. Not sure that's going to be supported by the FDA. So not sure it's even going to be supported by other regulators as well, like CE marking. So that's a question mark. Should we follow the ISO 13485 standard with clause numbering to adopt that for our procedure numbers, or leave it alone? I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer, but it's a question. Some of the other things we had here, there was a suggestion by Polly Thompson. She's one of the subcontractors that we use for quality system consulting. Polly had said, why don't you take your forms and your templates that you have as separate documents and put them as appendices at the end of your procedures. That way you have one document control number, and it's Appendix A, Appendix B, Appendix C, or Appendix 1, 2, 3. What about that? So that was a great idea. There are some downsides to that. That means you're revising the whole entire procedure anytime you make a change to a form. So that may or may not be desirable, but it certainly cuts down on the number of document control numbers you assign, and it makes it very obvious this form is associated with this procedure because it's in the appendices. So what do you think about that idea? Some other examples here. Some people ask, what is the difference between an SOP and a work instruction? It's the level of detail. An SOP is usually higher level, and a work instruction is much more detail oriented. But one of the criticisms we get a lot by auditors in the FDA as well, this procedure isn't detailed enough. And you say, well, we have a work instruction, but do you want to maintain a separate SOP for everything and a separate work instruction for everything? Why not just combine the two together and only have the more detailed version? Pluses and minuses. Some people say, well, people are only required to be trained on these SOPs, but they're not required to be trained on the work instruction unless they use that for their job every day. So we've defined that's not required for their jobs. That's just explaining why we don't want to have to train on that procedure to the detail where we can actually perform the procedure. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So if you're not going to perform the procedure every day, you only need a cursory knowledge of the procedure in the first place. So whether it's detailed or not, you're not going to absorb everything anyway. But I also wouldn't be trying to demonstrate competency that you can perform the procedure. I would want you to be aware of the procedure. Let me give you an example. Complaint handling. When I'm training a sales force, I don't expect them to fill out the whole form and know how to do everything correctly for complaint handling. What I expect is they know who the complaint handling unit is and that it's critical that they send the information that they have, as much as they have, as quickly as possible to the complaint handling unit, no matter what form it is. The way I like to describe it, I don't care whether you write it on a bar cocktail napkin and snap a picture with your cell phone and send it to me. I don't care if it's 2 a.m. Get it to me as soon as possible, and don't worry about the format. Worry about getting me content as quickly as possible to the right person so they can process the complaint. That's all they need to know. They don't need to know all the other 20 pages of the complaint file procedure because they're not going to do all those other steps. They're just going to do step 1, which is get the information to the complaint handling unit. That's it. They need to know who it is and get the information there as soon as possible. That's a very different level of training from the person that's in charge of complaint handling and has to fill out the form and do that every day. You might have a person, that's all they do. Very different levels of competency required for that. So there's some pluses and minuses. I'm kind of in favor of just having one detailed SOP that has the level of detail you would put in work instruction and abandoning work instructions. But that might be heresy to some of you, so let us know. Another idea here, create Dropbox alternatives. We've already worked on this and come up some ways. One is Google Drive, one is SharePoint. We've given that to customers in those formats, but they still have to access our Dropbox to get links to updates. And if they unsubscribe, they don't get those updates. Who likes Dropbox? Who hates Dropbox? What do you prefer? I'm not going to make everybody happy. I got to pick one. But we have a lot of legacy with Dropbox. I have over 2,000 2,000 folders that we manage in Dropbox. So which one should we use? Well, one of the tools we've come up with that allows us to get around the need to use Dropbox is we use Monday.com as a project management tool, and we help clients use that to implement their quality system. So that's been a great solution for us, but we'd love to know what you guys think. Let's see, another one here. One of the things that's not in our training procedure is all the job description titles. We have generic job descriptions we put in the procedures, but there's no one place where you can look and find all those. And because one of the things I tell people when they implement our quality system, start with a training matrix and identify what your roles and responsibilities are, update your org chart, and put that in the training matrix. Define who needs to be trained on what procedures. Let's start there. Well, if we already had the list of job titles that we use in the procedures in that document, then you could revise it there and you would make the same revision everywhere else. So that might be a little bit more intuitive to do it that way. So that was the idea behind it. But what do you think about it? Does it even matter to you? Is there a better way that you've seen out there to manage the titles? Because that's something we often see as I'll call it nuisance nonconformity. It doesn't add any value when an auditor says, well, your org chart says this, your job description says this, and your procedure says this. You have 3 different job titles, all for the same person, and none match what's on your business card. That is a very common situation. Well, the company changes over time. We give people new titles, and every time I want to give somebody a new title, I don't want to have to update the org chart, the job description, the procedure, and the business card. Can't I just update the business card only? Well, it depends on if I have a nuisance auditor or not. Is that a value-added finding or not? It's not value-added. It's going to add no value at all, but their point is valid. It's not consistent. And one of the things you're supposed to do is when you make a revision, you're supposed to assess the need to make revisions everywhere else. So you give somebody a promotion, give them a new title. What do you need to change? So those are some examples of the suggestions we have for improving the procedures. We've got a list of 20 of them here. This is not by any means a comprehensive list. I came up with this very quickly while we were having a meeting with our social media marketing person, Alicia. Alicia's going to send out this survey to people and get their feedback, but don't hesitate to add other. Don't hesitate to put comments down below this video. Let us know what you think. And if you've seen a better way to do it at another company, maybe in a supplier audit or at a previous company you worked at or the company you're at now, please share that with us. We want to make this as good as we can, but we don't want to spend a bunch of time on things that aren't going to add value. We want to add value. So those nuisance things, we've got some of them in here, but maybe they just don't matter, and they're things that really would matter that we can put in here. Now, there's one area that I haven't talked about at all. It was an idea that we didn't discuss today, but it was something that was foremost in my mind, probably right even with MDSAP certification. And that was, what about creating a quality system that's specific to software as a medical device? Because some companies out there, that's all they do. They are software as a medical device companies, and there's not a procedure or a standard out there that says this is what you do for software as a medical device. There is 62304 that tells you the software lifecycle development, but that's not the same as the quality system for software. So what should we do there? Should we have a special quality system that we've already tailored just to the software as a medical device companies out there? That's a question, and we're going to discuss that next week in our live streaming. But here's some ideas to think about when you're thinking about the revisions that the FDA is making. In 2016, when ISO 13485 was updated, they purposely said, we need to make the standard more suitable for software because time has passed and technology is, we see more devices out there that have software now. We also see software tools used for calibration. We see people using software to manage their quality system. We need this addressed in the standard. So they consciously said, we're going to do that. They also added service of medical devices. So now the standard is not just for manufacturing and design and distribution. It's also for servicing and software. So here's all they did to address software. Clause 3.11, the definition of a medical device. They included software. Wow. Number 2, clause 3.15, 315, the definition of a product. They added software. Not much different from the first one. The third one, they added a clause 4.16 for quality system software. That was needed because we needed something to tell us how to handle that. What it doesn't do is reference a standard that was released after that that tells you how to use a risk-based approach. So GAMP5 is how the pharmaceutical industry does it. That's a much more intense, double the size, double the amount of work for software validation of a quality system software. use the right tool, the risk-based approach that was written for medical devices, and we'll discuss that next week. But if you've seen our other videos, the number is 80002-2. Okay, next thing on the list, 6.3b, infrastructure, process equipment. So this was always something that was in there. With any kind of automated equipment like a sterilizer, you're going to have to validate the software. The software version changes, you're going to have to revalidate. So that's something that has to happen. But there's a little bit more information in there than there used to be. So 6.3b, that's a place to check out. Clause 7.5.6, this is very related, process validation. Any process validation, automated equipment, you still need it there. And that's very aligned, almost same kind of requirements in 6.3b and 7.5.6. And then the new requirement, 7.6, for control of monitoring and measuring equipment. So if you have a software tool like GaugeTrack, or you have calibrated equipment that has software, those have to be validated as well. If there's any way to update those or change those, if you just have firmware inside your device there and there's no way to modify it at all, that might not be something you need to worry about. You just need to calibrate the device. But software in calibrated devices needs to be addressed. If it can be programmed or updated in any way, and that could be under the process validation one, or it could be under the calibration one. But the original intent here was to focus on software like GaugeTrack that's going to track your software going to track your calibrated devices, very much like the software that impacts the quality system in 4.1.6. So those are the places, those are only 6 different clauses that it impacts. And then in table A1 at the end, there are 3 references referring back to 2 of the clauses that have requirements for software. So that's it. There are only 7 places. One's a table that repeats some references. The other 6 I went through, there's nothing really earth-shattering. And not once did I talk about software as a medical device in any of those. Nowhere in there. We didn't talk about software as a medical device in any of that. So the standard, even though they made the effort, they made it piss poor effort. It doesn't address it at all. What software is a medical device? Where is it in the standard? It's not in there. So we really ought to update the standard for software as a medical device. I'm not on the TC210 committee to do that, but that's my opinion. What we do need to do is think about what companies need to do, because there's no guidance in the standard telling you how to do it. A lot of people have questions, and so this would really help them. So those are the things that we're going to discuss next week. Please let us know what you think of the 20 ideas that we had, and please share your own ideas for improving our quality system, turnkey quality system, to update it and modernize it for the next 20 years or so. So let us know. February 2nd, 2026 is the goal when we want to have these changes done. So what can we do by then to make it better? See you later. Bye-bye.